Okay, hello, this is Google here. I'm back with another tutorial. Today we're doing Applied Energistics, which is a mod a lot of people have problems with. People need explaining, but we're just going to do it nice and simple here. As before, we're just going to assume that you know how to craft these items and you can look them up, so that shouldn't be an issue. Let's dive right in. So what I've got set up here is an energy acceptor with some power coming into it. Here I've got a flux point from a wireless network. And if you have questions on that, there's another video for it. Cool mod. Anyway, you're going to need some sort of power, and we'll put down a little glass cable, and these glass cables are what all ME networks use to kind of connect all the items together. And now from here, we can put down anything for our ME network. In this case, I'm just going to store some items with an ME drive. So I'm going to plop in a 4K ME storage cell, and now I can put items into my network. So the question is, how do I access the items? Well, for that, we're going to need a little crafting terminal here. And now I get this cool little window, and I can put items in, and I can take items out. And you'll notice that when I have an item in there, if I hover over the drive, now it says 33 bytes used. And the more items you put in, the more bytes it's going to show you. So now I have 129 bytes used. And that 4 of 63 types is just how many different kinds of items you can have. So I can only have 63 distinct kinds of items in the drive before it'll fill up. And likewise, I can only have 4,096 bytes of items. So if you run out of types, you can still put more items that you already have in there. And if you run out of bytes, you just can't put anything in there. And each drive, as you see, holds 10 slots. And you can just put as many storage cells as you want. And there's 64K, there's 16K. We have all these cool different kinds here. 1K, 4K, 16K, 64K. So whatever you wanna do. All right, so that's the basics if you want to just store some items in an Applied Energistics system. Let's get into a little more of the hard parts of the mod. So the question is, let's say I have these 7 drives, each with a storage unit in them, and I have my terminal here where I can access items. Let's say I want to add one more drive on. Let's see what happens. See how the whole network goes dead? And this is because there's a concept in the mod called channels, where each device takes up one channel. So right here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ME drives, plus our one crafting terminal, which counts as well. So we have 9 channels total. And this network by itself can only handle 8 channels. So what we need is an ME controller. So what we're going to do is plop that sucker down. And now everything's back online. And the reason for this is that without a controller, an ME network can only have 8 channels. So if you're just doing a little item storage, then you probably don't need a controller. But as soon as you want to branch out, now you're going to need an ME controller. And while these cables themselves can only hold 8 channels apiece, your ME controller can handle 16 channels per side of it. Okay, so let's say you want to expand your network. Well, what you can use to see how many channels you're using is this dense cable. And this will allow you to use 32 channels per face, all 32. Now these normal flux cables can only do 8 channels at a time, but these thicker dense cables can do up to 32 channels. So, for example, if I plop down my flux cable here and I try to do more than 8 channels, for example, with interfaces here, 5, 6, 7, 8. As soon as I do this 9th channel, then that's overloading the cable. But we can see this if we use some smart cable here. Let's grab some smart cable. Now smart cable is just like normal flux cable, except it shows how many channels are being used. Okay, so here we see 8 of 8 channels being used, meaning that this line itself is maxed out. If we try to add on another channel, it's not going to be able to. 0 out of 8, because we're maxed out on this cable right now. So we're going to have to upgrade it to dense cable. And now we see we have 10 out of 32 channels being used. So this dense cable is a great way to expand your network, connect to the different sides of the controller, and put more machines on there. Also worth noting is that your ME controller itself can be expanded as well. If you need more faces of it, you can plop down another controller block connected to it, and as long as they're all in a rectangular shape, then you can keep expanding it. I believe the max size is like a 7x7 or something like that. But for example, I can just keep adding on faces to my controller, and we would be in business. Alright, we're in our final section here, which is setting up auto crafting. This is one of the best parts about a network, is that you can craft things on demand. So let's say I have an alloy smelter here, and I want to set it up to automatically craft sand into glass. As we all know, you can just put one sand in here, it'll smelt it into a glass. So how would I connect that to my ME network? Well, first up, I'm going to need an interface. These ME interfaces are relatively cheap. You plop them down next to your device here, and you want to configure the side of your device to input and output to that interface. So we're having it on push-pull here. And now we need to connect our interface to the network. So I'll just throw down some smart cable here. And we see it light up with 1 of 8 channels, so we know our interface is connected. And now what we need to do is tell the network how to craft this. So what we're going to need is one of these ME pattern terminals. And we're just going to connect that to our network here. And this has got a cool little interface here where we configure crafting. So what you're going to need is a blank pattern here. And we're going to switch it to processing mode because this isn't a crafting recipe, this is a processing recipe. And what we're going to do is we're going to take 1 sand and we're going to tell it that 1 sand will get crafted into 1 glass. That's our recipe. Click the encode button. Now we've got our blank pattern here. And if you hit shift, it'll switch from pattern mode to just showing the item. So that can be kind of handy. And we're going to go to our interface, plop our pattern into our interface. And now if we go to any terminal on our network, we'll see that glass has this little craft text below it. So if we want to craft some glass, we can just click on that, type in how much we want, like 10. And we get an error here, no sand in the system. So let's put some sand in. Craft 10. Looks good to go, but it says no crafting CPUs are available. So for any crafting recipe, it says 54 bytes used. That number will be higher if it's more complex. You need a crafting CPU to handle it. So you have these devices that are called crafting storages, and you can just plop those down on your network. And then you're also going to need crafting coprocessing units or CPUs, and you'll plop those down too. And as long as they're all connected in some sort of rectangular fashion, then it'll recognize it. Now we can see we have 2 channels used because this coprocessing unit takes up a channel as well. And now when we go to craft, let's craft 10 glass. All good to go. Crafting CPU automatic. We could select one if we had more than 1 unit. Let's click start here. And if we go over, we see that our alloy smelter's fired up and it's crafting some glass. So that's pretty cool. Let's wait for one to finish here. Should be done. And if we go in our network, 3 glass just appeared in our network. And if you already have some of the item you want to craft, you can just middle click on it and then it'll give you the crafting option as well. Alright, so what if I want to craft something that's not a processing recipe? What if it's just a plain old crafting recipe? Well, for that, I'm going to need these molecular assemblers. And we're going to plop one of those down on the ground. And this just functions like a normal machine, just like this alloy smelter, but it just crafts recipes. So we'll throw an interface next to it. We can see they're both online now. Only the interface takes a channel. The molecular assembler itself doesn't. And what do we want to craft? Well, let's get some wood here, and let's tell it to craft crafting tables. So we'll switch to crafting in our pattern terminal. Tell it how to craft a crafting table, and let's encode that. We'll put it in our interface and put a little wood in the system. And now we should be able to craft, for example, 10 of these crafting tables. So let's see how it goes. Just like that, we can see it's crafting up. Boom, job done. So that's how you configure crafting recipes with molecular assemblers. It's worth noting that these interfaces can only hold 9 recipes apiece. So if you need more recipes, you can just plop down more interfaces next to your molecular assemblers and connect them up to your network. So now I have potentially 18 recipes I could auto-craft. And if you get tired of clicking on all your interfaces to put in recipes, you can grab an interface terminal and connect one of those to your network. And that will show you all the interfaces that you have connected to your network right now, and you can just drag and drop from here. So that makes it a lot easier when it gets more complicated. Okay, so that's pretty much how you do in Applied Energistics network or an ME network. You have channels, you have drives, crafting units, and interfaces, and those are pretty much the big components of it. All right, well, that's it for today's episode. Let me know if you have any more questions about Applied Energistics, and comment below with some cool feature you've done in your ME network. All right, I've been Googly. Have a good day.